It's deeply confusing to me that anyone has seen anything of mine or cares at all about what I'm doing. So,
Well, firstly, congratulations, Brandon. Lovely to meet you.
likewise.
Yeah, I love the movie. I mean, and I read somewhere that this is inspired by a holiday you had or a vacation, as you might call it in the States. So I was wondering where to and how so. Like, I assume it was a small part of the holiday that inspired this movie, because surely the whole thing didn't happen.
Well, I won't say how much happened. Um, no, it's you know what? Okay, so it started as a short story that I was writing. There's this execution scene early in the movie, and it initially was just that. And when I was expanding it into a feature script, I kept coming back to this one experience I had, I guess 20 years ago now. It was the one time I went on a kind of traditional all-inclusive resort vacation. It was to the Dominican Republic. And to me, it was an incredibly menacing and surreal experience because they would bus you in the middle of the night. You wouldn't see any of the surrounding country. It was just completely pitch black, and then they dropped you in this resort compound, which was surrounded by razor wire fence. You couldn't leave. The razor wire was sort of loosely disguised by
Wow.
palm leaves. There was a kind of fake town that you could go to shop in, and a hideous disco, and you're confined to this weird compound. Uh, and then afterwards, they would bus you back at the end of the week during the day. And of course, the surrounding area was very poverty stricken, and that contrast was horrible, but also surreal because you realize you've never been to this country. You've just been to this weird alternate dimension, the sort of horrible Disneyland version of the country, which to me seemed like a good setting for a film about people operating outside of conventional consequences.
Yeah. And you say that was 20 years ago, that vacation. So I'm wondering what's your process? How long does it take you to write a script? Did you like drop in and out of it over time, or did you write the whole thing in one go, if you know what I mean?
I think I wasn't really thinking of it as a script back then. I mean, I wasn't really. I was only just starting to think about maybe getting into film.
Okay.
But you end up certain things stick with you. It was a weird experience that I couldn't quite let go of, and you fall back into those memories when you're writing.
Yeah. And you have a dream cast in this. I mean, Alexander Skarsgard, Mia Goth, I mean, unbelievable actors. So was that a dream list you do up as a director and you start approaching people, or was there an audition process? How did it work?
With those kinds of actors, there's no audition process. You just you send it and you hope that they'll do it. Yeah, they're both actors I love and who I've been wanting to work with for years. I think they're just fantastic. So
Yeah.
I mean, I don't write my characters for particular actors because it's so hard. You can't assume anyone's going to want to do it. You can't assume they're going to be available.
Yeah.
There are passport issues with with a co-production. People have to have the right passport. There's so many. The stars have to align, and I just got very lucky to have actors of that caliber.
And when stars do align for something like this, like how long are you limited in time even more so when you use big actors? Do you know, like, as in, do they go, okay, I can give you this block of a couple of months, or I don't know what it was, but you know what I mean? Is it a tight schedule on something like this? Is it go, go, go?
It was a tight schedule, but not because of the actors. I mean, there is obviously you have to figure it out with people's schedules, and in this case, because there's a seasonal element to it too. There's a sort of shooting window that we had, and sometimes an actor just isn't available, and so you can't work with them on it. But it was go 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 just because it's an indie film. We were doing we shot in 25 days, which for what we were trying to do wasn't a huge amount of time, and so but that's more to do with just an indie budget and sort of doing what you can outside of a sort of Hollywood situation.
Is there time to sit down with the actors and go through? Because obviously, if you've written these characters, you flesh them out, the words are there. Is there time to sit down with them and go through in depth and have them give their 2 cents, whatever you want to call it, on the characters and develop them a bit themselves? Or is it like, no, we're filming tomorrow, let's go?
It really depends. It depends on the actor. It depends on the when they're available.
Yeah.
I definitely had conversations with all of the actors beforehand about what they had questions about why the characters were doing what they were doing, and I gave them feedback. It was different. I mean, with Alex, we had more of a sort of page turn, sat down, went through it in more of a kind of calculated way, page by page. With Mia, we didn't do that. She wants to talk about it, but I don't think she wants to analyze it in quite that detail. It's that level of detail. It's just differences of process. So I try to accommodate different actors.
Is it nice to see? I mean, Mia obviously has been doing well for years, but her star seems to have risen a lot. I just saw Pearl the other day; it's coming out over here soon. Is it nice to see that she's flying it, as we'd say in Ireland? Do you know what I mean? She's becoming quite the in-demand actor. Is it nice to see when you've worked with somebody like that? And what was she like to work with for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's fantastic. Again, I've been wanting to work with her for years, since I first saw her in Nymphomaniac, and it's just she's done so many amazing films, and Suspiria and High Life, and she's one of those actors who just to me always sort of kind of steals every scene that she's in. She's just she's so good, and so I was really thrilled to be able to work with her on this. She hadn't done, or she just finished shooting X and was doing Pearl. They kind of shot them back to back, but those films hadn't come out yet. So it's great. I think she's deserved it this whole time, but it's great that she now has had this run, and she's getting, I think, much deserved recognition for her work. Working with her was lovely. She's very, she's actually just a very sort of sweet, kind of quiet person. And she works herself up and does these incredible takes, and does this sort of explosive, intense performing, but then afterwards is immediately very lovely and easy. She's not really bringing that into the set life outside the shoot. She's not in any way difficult. She's just like really wonderful to work with.
Yeah, and I saw her in an interview recently, in a few interviews. She speaks very highly of you, but from working with you, but from before working with you. Like I think she took her day off filming Pearl on a Sunday when she was working 6 days a week to read your script because it was you. When you hear people refer to you like that and hold you in such high esteem, especially people like Mia, is it like a bit of a did you expect to be in this position? Do you know what I mean? Is it a bit of a pinch me slightly moment that you have so much respect in the industry?
It's deeply confusing to me that anyone has seen anything of mine or cares at all about what I'm doing. So, that more confusing than anything else. But great, because again, that's how I felt about her. So I was surprised that it was reciprocal. But obviously that's great because I wanted her in the film.
Okay. Obviously, there's a lots of shocking scenes. So I think people go into this. Some people will be surprised to know what to expect. Is it important to you to push the boundaries when you make your films? Do you know what I mean? Because you definitely do that.
It's less, to be honest, it's less about trying to shock people and push the boundary. I know people sort of see it as a shock film. There's a hugely long and kind of great history of shock filmmaking. I'm not, I like those films, but to me, creatively, I'm only so interested in shocking people. It's more narrative. In this film, for instance, it's not a conventional narrative. So much of the story is driven by this kind of psychological evolution of these characters based on what they're going through, and that's what sets up the next part and the next part and the next part. So to me, if that's the core of the film, it's important that the audience experiences what they're going through in a sort of visceral way, because film's a visual medium, and what it does well is seduces you into these experiences and implants these memories of these experiences in you. And so if the audience is feeling what the characters are going through, they're seeing what's happening, that calibrates them in the way that I want them to be calibrated to experience the next part of the film. It's not enough to just theoretically know, okay, there was an orgy and someone got murdered or whatever.
Yeah. And as you continue to move up the business, do you think will there have to be a decision along, like if you do a big studio project, do you think you'll always have the same freedoms to do exactly what you want if it's important to depict certain things in a movie? Do you know what I mean? Is it a choice for a director to certain, like, are you consciously going, okay, I'm going to do this indie film because I'm not going to be allowed to do that over there?
Well, I haven't been asked to do a studio film yet, so
I don't know.
I don't know if that's an option. Or I don't know. I mean, I think it depends. Certain, you definitely, the bigger the budget, the more creative freedom you give up, because people need it to hit with a broader audience. Certainly studios take over a lot of creative control. You know, I have Final Cut over my films now. I would not have Final Cut working on a big studio film. But I also think it depends on the filmmaker and the relationship there. So yes, you'd have to give it up to a certain degree. It might just drive me crazy. Maybe I would never want to do that, or I would try it and hate it. But I also think some directors are afforded a bit more freedom usually if they're commercially successful, which, you know, my films are not massive hits. This one is actually making money and doing relatively well, but it's not a Marvel film that's making $1 billion or whatever. So
yeah, I know what you mean. And the look of this film, can you maybe talk us about how you came up with that? And you worked with Kareem Hussein, I think, the cinematographer, obviously, on the film. What was that like? Because obviously it's a very distinct look, this film.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's great. I mean, Kareem is a mad genius, and he's shot all of my films, all my features, anyways, and it's a great process with him. I mean, we're really good friends. We live just down the street from each other. We spend a huge amount of time going into it, experimenting with visual in-camera practical effects. The hallucination sequences in the film are totally practical in-camera effects. There's no CGI to get those.
Oh wow! You can kind of tell though, yeah.
It
works so well. Do you know, in a good way? As in, do you know what I mean? You can see CGI a mile off now. Do you know, people are so used to it.
I think so too, you know, and I don't have any. I'm not against CGI. It can work in the right context, and there were VFX shots in the film, usually to like clean things up and to minor set enhancements, stuff you wouldn't, that's kind of invisible, like you wouldn't see it as CGI because it's not the big effect stuff. But to me, it's fun to work practically. I mean, first of all, it has a different texture to it. It has a different kind of weight to it on screen. I really just enjoy the aesthetic of it, but also there's a process element there, because Kareem and I will work for so long just messing with stuff, and with, you know, when you get your hands on gels and diopters and lights and projection feedback, and you're messing with it, you just stumble into these happy accidents. You know, you set out to try to play with one look and something happens that you didn't expect, and that becomes the central look to the film. And so I really like that process of discovery. And Kareem is, of course, absolutely brilliant and also loves that stuff, so we can just spend countless hours messing around and having a good time.
I can only imagine. I'd say it's great crack. Listen, it's been brilliant to talk to you, Brandon. Congratulations on the film. And yeah, we'll have to probably, I don't know whether it's going to be a studio picture or an indie one next, but whichever way around, I look forward to talking to you again, hopefully. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Good talking to you.
Cheers. See you later.